All right. This situation with Gabby, well, it seems the Native American community, on at least one site that I am a part of, are angry that Native American women don't get this kind of attention. I spoke up about that earlier today, now didn't I? I've probably spoken up about that hundreds of times. Same thing with these things happening to black folks. I just keep speaking out. I made a video called The Missing Women of Hardin, Montana. I just posted a link to it. That was made 10 months before Selena Not Afraid disappeared. She was 16 years old. She was later found dead. At the time that I made this video, there was about 100 Native Americans living or missing from the area. A lot of tragedy. Selena Not Afraid had a twin sister, just like Leslie Snell, just like Amanda, or sorry, not Amanda, just like Alicia Bollinger. Selena Not Afraid's twin sister Zoe was the youngest suicide in Montana history. She killed herself at age 11. Selena Not Afraid had an older brother named Preston Bell, who was shot to death by the Billings Police Department. Now that's secondhand information. It's firsthand information. It's general knowledge that her brother was shot by police, but which police department? Well, that's a matter of debate so far. I haven't been able to find any specific articles. She also had a sister, and I could be wrong about her name, but I believe her name is Teresa, who was killed just a little bit before Selena was killed, about a year earlier. She was hit and run. Someone in a vehicle ran her over and drove off. Now, there's this person, myingun lives in Ontario. Now, we need to work together. That's what we're missing is the numbers. I typed, and the missing homeless numbers are even larger. Long battle. That wasn't saying that Native Americans don't matter. That's saying we need to work together. The homeless, there's more hate crimes against the homeless than all other hate crimes combined in the United States, times 5. Now, on this post in Social Distance Powwow, it's got a picture of a mom holding a girl who's smiling, and it's the girl who's smiling they've got tagged as one missing white chick. And then the mother who's holding her up, it says American News Media. And then it's got a kid that looks like he's drowning, and it says nearly 6,000 mmiw cases. Do you know why it's typed mmiw instead of mmip? Because when you say missing and murdered Indigenous people, it doesn't bring it to life as much as missing and murdered Indigenous women. That means that there's a lot of Indigenous men who end up going by the wayside because people, just like this post is saying is being done about Native American women compared to white women, that same comparison can be made between missing and murdered Indigenous peoples and missing and murdered Indigenous women. Nobody really cares about the males. Those who do are related to the males, but the rest of our society doesn't care, and they need to. Now, let me scroll back down to this part. I want to make sure that I say things as they actually are. Myingun typed Sean Schwartz, what the fuck is this? A competition? Well, this is one of those things where it's okay for you and it's not okay for me. It's not fair that the Native Americans are not treated like a pretty white girl. Well, it's definitely not fair that the homeless are not treated like missing and murdered Indigenous women. I speak out for missing and murdered Indigenous women and missing and murdered Indigenous people. And I don't just post up about the missing women, I post up about the missing men too. They don't have to be natives for me to post up about it. That would be racist. If I just posted up about the natives, I'd be racist. And if I just posted up about the women, I'd be sexist. Now, through all of this, I've been fighting for the most victimized people in America. That would be children, the homeless, and the disabled. All these other groups, I've noticed, if it's not specifically about their group, then you must be saying something bad about them. That's how it's taken. Now, this guy, in addition to typing "What the fuck is this a competition?" he posted up a picture from my timeline. It says from Sean Schwartz. This is Kelly Thomas. He was murdered for being homeless. Nobody cares because he isn't black and isn't rich. And it shows a picture of Thomas Kelly, who was literally beaten to death by police in California, who got away with it. If the homeless have it so much worse, then why is it that I take the time to speak up for black people, for women, and for missing Native people? Because they are people too. I keep wondering when it is that they're going to realize that we're people as well. When I say they, I'm not talking about Native Americans. I'm not talking about black people. I'm talking about all of these groups, each and every individual within these groups. When are the homeless going to be seen as human beings? Now, all this terrible stuff that you hear about Native Americans, well, it's racist for you to say it about Native Americans, isn't it? It's racist if you bring up the drug epidemic on the reservations. It's racist if you bring up the alcoholism or the incest on the reservations. But if you bring up the fact that those things happen to homeless, well, then it's okay. It's okay to treat all the homeless people like they're all alcoholics, like they're all drug addicts, like they're all rapists, like they're all the products of incest. I did reply to myingun. I typed myingun. It is a disabled homeless man named Thomas Kelly who was beaten, or Kelly Thomas, who was beaten to death by police in California. I certainly hope it isn't a competition, but it isn't solidarity either. Yes, the white girl got more attention than mmiw. That's why this post was made. So if that constitutes a competition, then sure. The fact that there are 5 times more hate crimes against the homeless than all other groups combined truly does illustrate the hypocrisy of the argument. Meanwhile, although I'm so much more likely to be killed by law enforcement or serial killers, I still fight for mmiw and mmip. Am I less than a person because of my skin color? Is Kelly Thomas less of a person because he was homeless? I'll send you a link to my channel. I used to be nice, but being nice didn't save as many lives as speaking out. So now I speak out. You are a person to me, and your life is worth saving. But am I a person to you? Is my life worth saving? And then I posted a link to the Missing Women of Hardin, Montana video that I posted. You know, when I posted that video, I got like just barely over 50 views. Barely. 10 months later, when Selena Not Afraid disappeared, it ended up getting shared 14,000 times. Then there were some people who wanted to pretend things that happened didn't actually happen and pretend that things that didn't actually happen happened. People wanted to start making up stories to try to paint me as possibly the person who did horrible things to Selena Not Afraid. It was Native American people who dropped her off in that storm and killed her. You can't blame white people for that. You can't. Sure, you can bring up the socioeconomic issues, but if you're going to do that, you need to do the same for the homeless. You need to do the same for black people. We got black people saying, hey, this isn't fair, this isn't fair. We got Native Americans saying, this isn't fair, this isn't fair. And then the very same stuff that people are doing to them, they're doing to the homeless. These groups are doing these things to the homeless, not caring about the skin color of the homeless. The fact that they're homeless is good enough. I see Native Americans taking advantage of the homeless. I see white people taking advantage of the homeless. I see black people taking advantage of the homeless. I hear from all of these groups about how basically the homeless people don't matter. Native Americans are allowed to complain about how a pretty white girl is treated compared to Native American peoples. Well, take a look at how the homeless are treated compared to Native American peoples. The homeless are the most victimized by law enforcement, by the public, by the judicial system. The homeless only account for 500,000 people in the United States in 2019. Black people accounted for 60 million. Black people accounted for 22% of those killed by police in 2019. The homeless accounted for 49%. So who's really the most victimized? I'm told that because of the color of my skin that I can't know what any of this is like. With all due respect, I'm homeless and disabled. So I do know. Well, Hardin, Montana had, well, the Hardin area had 100 missing people in a 10-year period. I had over 300 people that I knew die within a 10-year period. A lot of them ended up turning back up again, but many of them didn't. Let me explain something to you as far as homeless life goes. There's a type of homeless people called travelers. You might call them hitchhikers. You might call them rail hoppers. The fact is that hitchhikers are ignored often. Now, according to statistics, the hitchhiker is like 35 times more likely to be the victim than the driver. That's because once the driver's got you in their vehicle, they can drive you wherever, and they have an easy way to dump your body. They don't have to drag you for miles. They can drive there. It's faster. They're less likely to get busted. Being told that I can't be a victim because of the color of my skin is entirely untrue. Well, that's the bias, isn't it? Nobody would ever hurt a white person, even a white male. All right, let's take a look at all of these different pride groups. Mexican pride, Hispanic pride, Black pride, Native pride. These are not considered hate groups, but you say white pride, and you are now a hate monger, apparently. It's a stigma that's attached. Like every white person in America is the rich asshole who did bad shit to you. Like every white American was alive 200 years ago when your people were harmed in such a horrible way. Like every poor white male in America made these laws or ignored these laws that you're being victimized by. I'm not against the Native American community. I fight for their rights because I recognize them as my rights. I don't hate the black community. I fight for their rights because those rights are my rights. Or rather, they're supposed to be. But the amount of hatred that I have gotten from the Native American community and from the black community for speaking up for the rights of all of us instead of just your group. How many times I've been treated like I am some sort of ungrateful POS because I speak out for all the victims. It's pretty screwed up. Now, it didn't get much past 14,000 views, that video of the missing women of Hardin, Montana. The reason for that is because it got to the point where people were hopping on and accusing me of being a killer and a serial killer and all sorts of creepy stuff like that. Next thing you know, I'm getting a bunch of hate mail from the Native American community because I tried to help find Selena Not Afraid. Don't make no sense, does it? Then again, I made those posts about Selena Not Afraid missing, knowing that people were going to do that. The Native American community in Hardin, Montana, they were hurting a lot, and they wanted a scapegoat to help make their hearts feel better. And just like when Natalie Bollinger was killed, these folks were wrong. They targeted someone who was easy to target, just like anybody else. They targeted a homeless person, decided to call him mentally ill, and pretend that he was a drug addict. Interesting. I quit taking pills when I was 17. I quit drinking alcohol when I was 21. I've never tried heroin. I've never tried cocaine. I don't do meth. I don't do opiates. But yeah, sure, I'm the enemy because of my skin color. I can't possibly know what abuse is because of my skin color. This is kind of like the number of women who tell me I need to shut up about the abuse that myself and other men have gone through as far as sexual abuse goes because women have to take it more. There are 60 million men in the United States. 60 million who were raped or molested before the age of 18. It's a pretty big number. That's just male victims. I got to apologize. I was wrong. It's not 60 million, it's 29 million. But still, 29 million males in America, that's a pretty significant number. I'm not going to tell, not 60, 29 million. I'm not going to tell 29 million victims that they're not allowed to speak up because they have the wrong gender. That's just not going to happen. The reason that we got to type MMIW instead of MMIP is because people don't look when you say MMIP. That's missing and murdered Indigenous people. Now, on my Facebook and on my YouTube, I've probably spoken up hundreds of times for MMIP and MMIW. I don't tell them to shut up just because they're not victimized nearly as much as the homeless. I don't tell them that they can't be victims because they're victimized less than the homeless. I still fight for them, but are they fighting for me? Are they fighting for my homeless homies? Some of my homeless loved ones are black. Is BLM speaking out about them? No, they're homeless. Homeless people aren't people to people in houses. We get to hear about how Native Americans are alcoholics and drug addicts. We get to hear how black people are alcoholics and drug addicts. And then we get to hear from many members of BLM and many people who speak up for MMIW about how homeless people are all drug addicts and alcoholics. Shit goes downhill, don't it? The same argument that you have about Gabby Petito and all of the attention that she's gotten, I've spoken out about that for years. It's the same argument with the homeless people compared to Native Americans or black folks. They're victimized a lot more and they don't get the same attention. When one of us dies, we get the good riddance. That's how it's treated by most of America. If you're homeless, the black community doesn't seem to care. The Native American community doesn't seem to care. The white community doesn't seem to care, regardless of your color. When I grew up in the system. If a black kid got beat up by a white kid, they took away his black card. Same thing when you're homeless. When you're a black person who becomes homeless, Much of the black community treats you like you're not a black person anymore. You're not a person at all. Same thing with much of the Native American community, and same thing with much of the quote unquote white community. I don't really know what to classify white people as. I mean, there's the argument of, oh, well, we know our ancestry and we know where we came from, where black people don't, but Native Americans do. Does that same argument hold solid there? It's not a competition, but as long as you're going to assume it's a competition or pretend that it's a competition or tell the other victims that they need to shut up or treat them like they're trying to make it a competition as if they don't matter for any reason whatsoever, you're doing something horrible. You're being a hypocrite. You're doing exactly what it is that you're complaining people are doing to you. And which people are doing this to you? Is it people like me who speak out for missing and murdered Indigenous peoples? Is it me who's your roadblock? Is it me who's victimizing you? Is it me who's making these laws? Is it me making you drink alcohol or do drugs or have sex with your own kids? See, that's something that's wrong here in Chapel, Nebraska. There's a lot of white people that have sex with their kids too. It's gross. No matter what color your skin is, it's still gross. Don't have sex with your fucking kids. Does that say all black people have sex with their kids, or all white people have sex with their kids, or all native people have sex with their kids? No. It's saying we need to do something about the crime, not the victim. If it is wrong to do it to a black person, it should be equally as wrong to do it to a Native American or a white person or a homeless person. Wrong is wrong is wrong. A black person shooting a white girl for saying all lives matter. People trying to sell this narrative that all lives matter is racist as an excuse to try to justify crimes like that. No, absolutely not. All lives do matter. Native Americans are people too, and their lives do matter. Homeless people are human beings too, and their lives do matter. Women are human beings, their lives do matter. And men are also human beings, and their lives do matter. Yes, I speak up for black rights. I speak up for Native American rights. I stand up for them as if they were my own rights because they are. How many Native Americans, how many of these people in the MMIP groups and MMIW groups, how many of them are speaking up for the homeless? How many of the folks in these BLM groups are speaking up for the homeless? How many people in these women's groups are speaking up for the homeless? Telling somebody that they can't be a victim because of the color of their skin is horrible. Telling them that their victimization doesn't matter because they're homeless is horrible. Telling them that they can't be a victim because they're males is horrible. I don't have to agree with the hatred towards homeless people to stick up for the very same people who are throwing that hatred. When Native Americans disappear, I speak up. I post it up. When these things happen to black people, I also speak up and post it up. I'm not going to ignore white people when they're victimized. I'm not going to ignore males when they're victimized. I'm not going to ignore black people when they're victimized. I am not going to ignore Native people when they are victimized. I am going to speak out. Despite all the hatred towards me when Selena Not Afraid disappeared, I still continued to speak out. Still continued to get the word out there. And all of the hatred towards me only helped to spread it. All of the hatred towards me was able to at least for once be used for good. Because although many people who claim that they love me really don't give two shits one way or the other, the people who hated me looked at that and shared the shit out of it. They ate it up. They looked at all of the stuff in the chat where people were trying to pretend like I was some sort of a monster, and they went, yeah, I can slander Sean's name some more. And that's fine, because at least it got the word out about Selena Not Afraid. That's something I can be proud of. It was worth the pain. It was worth the harassment. And although it's sad that she was not found alive, at least she was found. You take a look at all of the effort that was made to try to find Selena Not Afraid. It's a lot more effort than I'd ever seen towards finding a missing Native American person ever before. It's a lot more than I have ever seen, ever, when it comes to a missing homeless person. Nobody cares about missing homeless people, except for the homeless. I fight for a lot of groups' rights that I'm not even a part of that group. And I catch a lot of flack from members of those groups because I fight for their rights. And because I recognize that those are my rights too. Now, who is the number one group that I stick up for? Children. Children always come first. Children come before adults. Children come before either gender. Children come before skin color and religion. Children come before the homeless and before the disabled. I suppose I should probably end this video. I just realized there's a whole bunch of comments on the side. Someone calling themselves Bitch Life of Bum typed, Chris Johnson just took my Ativan with telekinesis. Well, those of you who have paid attention to my videos, you know that these are my trolls. They will continue to make more and more and more accounts, and I will continue to kick them out. I'm going to take a picture of what these folks typed so that I have evidence of it before I kick them off of here. Let's see. There's someone calling themselves Gerald Lust. is also one of those videos. You know exactly who these people are. You probably know a few of their other aliases. And you also know what I'm about to do. Hide user on this channel. Blam. The person calling themselves Bitch Life of Bum. It says message deleted by Sean David. View deleted message. Now let's go to Gerald Lust. That's right, same thing. Hide user on this channel. See, this is what happens to people like me who speak up. I'm not the right color to be a victim. I'm not the right gender to be a victim. I don't have the right amount of money to be a victim. I don't have the right looks to be a victim. I have the same complaints as the black community and the same complaints as the native community, and I have 100 times more reasons to speak. The top 3 victimized groups in the United States I am a part of. Ixith 2 typed fucking trolls. I'm going to show that. You're right, Ixith 2. Divided we fall. If you're not willing to fight for black rights, you don't deserve your own. Those are our rights. If you're not willing to fight for Native American rights, you don't deserve your own. Because those are our rights. If you're not willing to fight for the homeless rights, you don't deserve your own. Because those are our rights. If you won't fight for the rights of the disabled, well, again, you see where this is going. Our rights. Now, we got a lot of people who want to pretend that every time there's an argument between a man and a woman, it's got to be the man's fault. I've seen a lot of women do horrible, horrible things, outright destroy a man's life because he would not have sex with her. It's horrible. I've also seen a great many men help out a woman who's a drug addict, and she destroyed his life. Many times. Well, many of the women that I know, they post up on their Facebook about needing penis all the time. Almost every other post is about needing some penis. They want sex, they want sex, they want sex. And then it's thrown at men that men are bad people if they want sex. Just the idea that they possibly might validates an excuse for you to harm them or to send other people to harm them. Oh, well, he might want to have sex with me. So why don't you guys go fuck him up? And they do. It's okay for her to want sex. It's okay for her to have sex. But heaven forbid a nerd be nice to her. If a nerd is nice to her, it must mean that he only wants sex and he's going to do horrible things to her because he's a nerd. He's not good looking like Joshua Grimm or Joshua Martindale, whatever he wants to go by. Jen Burnout Pothead typed, want me to SL? Slam, can I slam your cheeks? We love you, Sean. Scott DaCosta, bad day too. I'm not sure how to interpret that. I'm pretty much assuming that can I slam your cheeks is some sort of metaphor. Anyway, the point of this is that this is our fight. We got all these different groups that want all of the attention on their group and no other, unless they're complaining about another. Now, that stuff that this gentleman was complaining about, I was complaining about exactly the same thing earlier today. Sorry, earlier yesterday. It's 3:50 a.m. here. About how because Gabby is a pretty white girl, it's on every news station over and over and over and over again. I've spoken out about how when Natalie Bollinger disappeared, everybody made a big thing about it because she was a pretty white girl. They made far bigger of an issue about Natalie Bollinger disappearing than they ever did about Selena Not Afraid, or Frida Knows Gun, or Henny Scott, or Kesara Stops Pretty Places, or Mr. Two Dogs. Things change when we make them change. That's as simple as it is. Divided we fall. If you can't see a homeless person as a human being, you're screwing yourself over. The only group in the United States that you can fight for and fight for all of our rights and fight for equality is the homeless community. There are men who are homeless. There are women who are homeless. There are natives who are homeless. There are blacks who are homeless. There are whites who are homeless. There are old people who are homeless. There are children who are homeless. There are drug addicts who are homeless. There are alcoholics who are homeless. There are sober people who are homeless. Homelessness covers all of us. Fighting for the homeless is fighting for black rights. Fighting for the homeless is fighting for disabled rights. Fighting for the homeless is fighting for men's rights. Fighting for the homeless is fighting for women's rights. Fighting for the homeless is fighting for all of us. Are you fighting for all of us? Or do you only care about your group of women, or your group of men, or your group of natives, or your group of blacks, or your group of whites? Whose rights are you fighting for? Special rights are not rights, they are privileges. If you get something that the next person doesn't, you are privileged. Native Americans are privileged compared to the homeless. Black people are privileged compared to the homeless. Men and women are privileged compared to the homeless. There are straight homeless people. There are gay homeless people. There are bi homeless people. There are Christian homeless people. There are atheist homeless people. There are Muslim homeless people. There are Jewish homeless people. There are Odinist homeless people. And guess what? They're all still people. If you disagree, you can kiss my ass.